Have you ever loved someone so much that you forgot to love yourself? Have you ever given everything to your child only to wonder if that love was a mistake? My name is Martha, I'm 68 years old, and I need to tell you a story that will break your heart, but maybe, just maybe, it will help you understand something important about family, love, and the price we pay for blind devotion. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real family stories like this one. I live in a small town in Texas where everybody knows everybody and families are supposed to stick together through thick and thin. For the past 15 years, ever since my husband Robert died from a heart attack, I've devoted every breath in my body to my daughter Sarah. She was only 14 when we lost Robert, and I promised myself that I would be both mother and father to her. I would give her everything I never had, everything Robert and I dreamed of giving her together. Sarah is 29 now, and I'll be honest with you, she's beautiful. She has those bright green eyes that sparkle like emeralds, and long blonde hair that catches the sunlight just right. People always told me she could be a model or an actress, and maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe I believed too much in her dreams and forgot about reality. Maybe I spoiled her because I wanted her to have the world at her feet. When Robert died, he left us with a modest life insurance policy and our little house on Maple Street. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get by if we were careful. I took a job at the local diner serving coffee and pie to truckers and farmers, working long hours on my feet even though my knees ached and my back screamed by the end of each shift. But every dollar I earned went towards Sarah's future. I paid for her college education, bought her a brand new car for her graduation, helped her with rent when she moved to the city to chase her dreams. You see, Sarah always had big dreams. She wanted to be somebody important, somebody famous. She studied communications in college, and after graduation she moved to Dallas, saying she was going to work in television or maybe start her own business. I was so proud of her ambition, so happy that my little girl was reaching for the stars. Every month I would send her money to help with expenses. 300 here, 500 there, whatever she needed. She would call me crying, saying she was struggling, saying she just needed a little help to get back on her feet. And I gave it to her every single time. Even when it meant I had to eat beans and rice for dinner, even when it meant I couldn't afford to fix the leaky roof or replace the old washing machine that barely worked. I told myself that sacrifices were what mothers make for their children. I told myself that one day when Sarah made it big, she would understand what I had done for her. The truth is, I was lonely. After Robert died, the house felt so empty, so quiet. Sarah's phone calls were the highlight of my week. When she would visit every few months, usually when she needed something, the house would come alive again. I would cook her favorite meals, do her laundry, listen to her talk about her life in the big city. Those moments were worth every sacrifice, every dollar I sent, every sleepless night worrying about her. But lately something had changed. Sarah's visits became less frequent, and when she did come home she seemed distracted, impatient. She would spend most of her time on her phone, texting people I didn't know, talking in whispers about things she wouldn't explain. When I asked her about her work, her relationships, her plans, she would give me short answers and change the subject. So I kept hoping. I kept believing that deep down Sarah loved me the way I loved her. I kept telling myself that she was just going through a difficult phase, that all young people struggle to find their way in the world. I made excuses for her coldness, her distance, her constant requests for money. I convinced myself that I was helping her build a better life, even if it meant draining my savings account month after month. Last month, my savings account hit zero for the first time since Robert died. I had given Sarah my last $500 to help her pay what she said was an emergency medical bill. I didn't mind, really. What good is money if you can't help your own child? But it scared me a little, realizing that at 68 years old, I had nothing left except my Social Security check and the house Robert and I had bought 30 years ago. That's when Sarah called with what she said was wonderful news. She was coming home for a visit and she wanted to take me somewhere special. She said she had been thinking about me a lot lately, about how hard I had worked, about all the sacrifices I had made. She wanted to do something nice for me, something to show her appreciation. "Mom," she said over the phone, her voice sweet like honey, "I want to take you shopping in Houston. We'll make a whole day of it. We'll go to those fancy stores you always talked about, maybe get our hair done, have a nice lunch. Just the two of us like old times." I felt tears in my eyes when she said that. It had been so long since Sarah wanted to spend time with me, so long since she seemed to care about my feelings. Maybe I had been wrong to worry. Maybe she really did love me and she was finally ready to show it. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" I asked, hardly believing it. That sounds expensive and I know you're trying to save money. Don't worry about money, Mom, Sarah said quickly. I've been doing better lately. I want to spoil you for once. You deserve it after everything you've done for me. Those words, everything you've done for me, made my heart sing. Finally, my daughter was acknowledging my sacrifices. Finally, she was going to treat me the way a daughter should treat her mother. I started planning what I would wear, imagining us laughing together in fancy stores, maybe buying a pretty dress I could wear to church or a nice dinner. The week before Sarah was supposed to visit, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the beauty salon and got my hair permed and colored, covering up the gray that had been making me look older than my 68 years. I bought a new lipstick and even splurged on a bottle of perfume. I wanted to look nice for our special day together. I wanted Sarah to be proud to be seen with her mother. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, made sure everything was perfect for Sarah's visit. I went to the grocery store and bought all her favorite foods, even though it meant spending money I didn't really have. I baked her favorite cookies, the ones with chocolate chips and walnuts that she used to love as a little girl. I wanted everything to be perfect. The night before Sarah arrived, I could barely sleep. I kept thinking about our day together, about how it would feel to have my daughter's attention again, to feel like we were a real family. I imagined us talking and laughing, sharing stories, maybe even talking about the future. Maybe Sarah would tell me about a boyfriend or about her job or about her dreams. Maybe she would ask me about my life, about my feelings, about my hopes. When Sarah knocked on my door that Friday morning, she looked beautiful as always, but something was different. She seemed nervous, fidgety, checking her phone every few minutes. She gave me a quick hug, the kind you give to someone you barely know, and immediately started talking about how we needed to leave soon to beat the traffic. "You look nice, Mom," she said, but she was looking at her phone, not at me. "Are you ready to go? We should probably get on the road." I had expected us to sit down, have some coffee, eat some of the cookies I had baked, maybe talk for a while before we left. But Sarah seemed anxious to leave, so I grabbed my purse and followed her to her car. It was a new car, I noticed, much nicer than the one I had helped her buy 2 years ago. When I asked her about it, she said it belonged to a friend who was letting her borrow it. As we drove away from my house, I felt a flutter of excitement in my stomach. This was it, the day I had been dreaming about. My daughter and I, together, having fun, being a real family again. I started talking about the places we might visit, the stores we might browse, the lunch we would have together. But Sarah wasn't really listening. She kept checking her phone at red lights, sending quick text messages to someone. When I asked her who she was texting, she said it was just work stuff, nothing important. But her voice sounded strange, tight, like she was hiding something. "Sarah, honey," I said gently, "you seem worried about something. Is everything okay?" She glanced at me quickly, then back at the road. "Everything's fine, Mom. I'm excited about our day together. That's all." But something in her eyes told me that wasn't the truth. There was something else there, something that made my stomach feel uneasy. Still, I pushed the feeling away. This was my special day with my daughter, and I wasn't going to let my worries ruin it. As we drove toward Houston, I tried to start conversations about her life, her work, her friends. But Sarah's answers were short, distracted. She would say yes, or no, or maybe without really engaging. She kept checking her phone, and twice she answered calls, speaking in low voices about things I couldn't understand. "I have to make a quick stop," Sarah said suddenly, about an hour into our drive. "There's something I need to pick up." She pulled off the highway into a rest area that looked almost empty. There were just a few cars parked near the bathrooms and a long stretch of empty road beyond that. It wasn't the kind of place you would normally stop unless you really needed to. "What do you need to pick up here?" I asked, looking around the empty parking lot. "Just something for later," Sarah said, getting out of the car. "Can you wait here for a minute?" She walked away from the car, pulling out her phone and making another call. I watched her through the window and I could tell she was upset about something. She kept running her fingers through her hair, the way she used to do as a child when she was nervous or scared. That's when I started to really worry. Something was wrong, very wrong, and Sarah wasn't telling me what it was. I had a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach, the kind of feeling you get when you know something bad is about to happen but you don't know what. When Sarah came back to the car, she looked pale and shaky. Her hands were trembling as she started the engine, and she kept glancing in the rearview mirror like she was expecting someone to follow us. "Sarah," I said, reaching over to touch her arm, "what's going on? You're scaring me." She pulled away from my touch and stared straight ahead at the road. Nothing's going on, Mom. Everything is fine. We're going to make one more stop before we get to Houston. But we weren't heading toward Houston anymore. I could tell from the sun's position that we were driving in a different direction, away from the city toward empty countryside. The roads were getting smaller, more isolated, and I hadn't seen another car in several minutes. Where are we going? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was starting to race. Just a little detour, Sarah said, but her voice cracked when she said it. Trust me, okay? Just trust me. Those words, trust me, should have made me feel better. But the way she said them, with that tremor in her voice and that look in her eyes, made me more frightened than ever. This wasn't the shopping trip she had promised. This wasn't the special day together we were supposed to have. This was something else entirely, something that made my daughter's hands shake and her voice break. As we drove deeper into the empty countryside, past fields of cotton and corn, past farmhouses that looked abandoned, past road signs pointing to towns I had never heard of, I realized that whatever was happening, whatever Sarah was planning, it wasn't going to end the way I had hoped. The mother's instinct that had kept me awake nights worrying about her was screaming at me now, telling me that my daughter, my beautiful, troubled daughter, was about to break my heart in ways I couldn't even imagine. But I still loved her. Even as fear crept up my spine and my hands began to tremble in my lap, I still loved her with every fiber of my being. Because that's what mothers do. We love our children even when they're leading us down dark roads to places we don't want to go. We love them even when our instincts tell us to run, even when our hearts tell us that the child we raised with such care and devotion is about to become a stranger who will change our lives forever. The road seemed to stretch forever ahead of us, empty and endless under the blazing Texas sun. Sarah hadn't spoken in 20 minutes, and the silence in the car felt heavy, like storm clouds gathering before a tornado. I kept glancing at her profile, trying to read the expression on her face, but she looked like a stranger to me. The daughter I had raised, the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who used to tell me all her secrets, had been replaced by someone cold and distant, someone who wouldn't even look at me. Sarah, please talk to me, I said softly, breaking the terrible silence. I'm your mother. Whatever is wrong, we can work through it together. She didn't answer. She just kept driving, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel, her jaw clenched tight like she was fighting some internal battle. The speedometer showed she was driving faster than she should on these narrow country roads, and I found myself holding onto the door handle, not just from the speed, but from the growing fear that something terrible was about to happen. Then, without warning, Sarah slammed on the brakes so hard that my seatbelt cut into my chest and my purse flew off my lap onto the floor. The car skidded to a stop on the gravel shoulder of the road, dust swirling around us like a desert storm. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What's wrong? I gasped, looking around frantically. Did we hit something? Is someone hurt? Sarah turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, staring straight ahead at the empty road. Her breathing was fast and shallow, like she had just run a marathon. When she finally turned to look at me, her green eyes were filled with something I had never seen before. Not sadness, not anger, but something colder, something that made my blood freeze in my veins. The car is overheating, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. We need to let it cool down. I looked at the dashboard, confused. The temperature gauge showed normal, and the engine didn't sound like it was overheating. In fact, everything seemed fine except for the look in my daughter's eyes and the way her hands were shaking as she unbuckled her seatbelt. It doesn't sound like it's overheating, I said carefully. Maybe we should call someone for help? I don't have my cell phone with me, but you have yours. The engine is overheating, Sarah repeated louder this time. I need you to get out and look under the hood while I check something. Get out. I looked around at the deserted road, the empty fields stretching in every direction, the sun beating down mercilessly from a cloudless sky. Honey, I don't know anything about car engines. And it's so hot out there. Just get out of the car, Mom. Sarah shouted suddenly, her voice cracking with emotion. Please, just do what I'm asking you to do. The desperation in her voice scared me more than her anger. This wasn't the Sarah I knew, the daughter who could be spoiled and demanding but who had never shouted at me like that, with such raw pain in her voice. Something was terribly wrong, more wrong than an overheated car engine, more wrong than a change in our shopping plans. Okay, I said quietly, my hands trembling as I reached for the door handle. Oh yeah, I'll look at the engine. But Sarah, after that, I want you to tell me what's really going on. I want the truth. I stepped out of the car into the oppressive heat, and immediately felt the sun pressing down on my shoulders like a heavy blanket. The road stretched empty in both directions, not another soul in sight. No houses, no businesses, no people. Just endless fields of dry grass and the occasional dead tree standing like a skeleton against the blue sky. Sarah got out of the car too and walked around to the front. She popped the hood and gestured for me to come closer. Look here, she said, pointing at the engine. Can you see if there's any steam or anything unusual? I walked around to the front of the car, feeling foolish and confused. The engine looked normal to me, just a mass of metal and wires that I couldn't make sense of. I bent over to get a closer look, trying to be helpful, trying to be the good mother I had always been. That's when I heard the car door slam. I straightened up quickly, my heart jumping into my throat. Sarah was already back in the driver's seat and the engine was running. Through the windshield I could see her face, and the expression there made my knees go weak. It wasn't the face of a daughter who needed help with her car. It was the face of someone who had just made a terrible decision, someone who was about to do something she knew was wrong. Sarah. I called out, walking quickly toward the driver's side door. What are you doing? The engine is fine, there's nothing wrong with it. She rolled down the window just a few inches, just enough for me to hear her voice. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine and I could see tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I'm so sorry, but I don't have a choice. What do you mean you don't have a choice? I reached for the door handle, but she had already locked the doors. Sarah, let me back in the car right now. What is going on? I can't take you with me, she said, her voice breaking. I can't. Someone will come along and help you. Someone will find you and take you home. The full horror of what was happening hit me like a physical blow. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was planning to leave me alone on this empty road in the middle of nowhere. The shopping trip, the special day together, it had all been a lie. This had been her plan all along. Sarah, please, I begged, pounding on the window with both hands. Please don't do this. I'm your mother. I love you. Whatever is wrong, we can fix it together. I love you too, Mom, she sobbed. That's why this is so hard. But I have to do this. I have to go, and I can't take you with me. Go where? I screamed, my voice echoing across the empty fields. Go where, Sarah? What are you running from? But she was already putting the car in drive. I ran alongside the car as it started to move, my 68-year-old legs working harder than they had in years, my heart pounding with terror and desperation. Don't leave me here. I cried out. Please, Sarah, don't leave your mother alone. The car picked up speed and I couldn't keep up anymore. I stumbled and fell to my knees on the hot asphalt, watching through my tears as the car that had brought me here disappeared around a bend in the road, taking my daughter away from me and leaving me alone in a place I didn't recognize with no way to get home. For a long moment I just knelt there on the burning pavement, unable to believe what had just happened. The silence was complete except for the sound of my own ragged breathing and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. The sun beat down on my back and I could feel the heat seeping through my clothes, making me dizzy and sick. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. My Sarah, my baby girl, wouldn't abandon her mother on a deserted road. There had to be some explanation, some misunderstanding. Maybe she would come back. Maybe she had just gone to get help and would return for me. But deep in my heart I knew she wasn't coming back. The look in her eyes, the tears on her face, the way she had said I'm sorry, it had all been goodbye. My daughter had planned this, had brought me here on purpose to leave me, and now I was alone in a way I had never been alone in my entire life. I forced myself to stand up, my knees shaking and my vision blurry from the heat and the shock. I looked around at the empty landscape, trying to figure out which direction might lead to help. The road stretched endlessly in both directions and I had no idea which way led back to civilization. I didn't even know what county I was in, let alone what town might be nearest. I started walking in the direction we had come from, hoping that maybe someone would drive by, maybe someone would help me. My feet, in the new shoes I had bought specially for our shopping trip, began to hurt almost immediately. The sun was merciless and I could feel sweat dripping down my face, making my carefully styled hair stick to my scalp. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 20 minutes, I heard the sound of a car engine behind me. I turned around, my heart leaping with hope. Maybe it was Sarah coming back for me. Maybe she had changed her mind, realized what she was doing and come back to take me home. But it wasn't Sarah's car. It was an old pickup truck, rusty and dented, with a man behind the wheel who looked to be about my age. He slowed down as he approached me, and I could see the concern on his weathered face as he took in my appearance. An elderly woman walking alone on a deserted road, obviously in distress. He pulled over and rolled down his window. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need help?" I wanted to lie, to pretend that everything was fine, to protect my daughter's reputation even after what she had done to me. But I was too tired, too hurt, too broken to lie anymore. "My daughter," I said, my voice cracking. "My daughter left me here. She drove away and left me." The man's expression changed from concern to shock, then to anger. "Left you here? On purpose?" I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "Well, that ain't right," he said firmly. "That ain't right at all. You get in this truck right now and I'll take you wherever you need to go." His name was Frank and he was a retired farmer who lived about 30 miles away. As we drove toward my town, I found myself telling him the whole story, about Robert's death, about my sacrifices for Sarah, about the money I had given her, about how I had thought we were going shopping and ended up abandoned on a back road. Frank listened without judgment, occasionally shaking his head in disgust. "I got 4 kids of my own," he said. "And I can tell you not one of them would ever treat me or their mother that way. What your daughter did to you, ma'am, that's not normal. That's not how family behaves." His words hit me like a slap in the face because they forced me to confront a truth I had been avoiding for years. What Sarah had done wasn't just cruel or thoughtless. It was deliberate, calculated, and completely without love or respect. She had planned this abandonment, had looked into my eyes and lied to me about our special day together, had watched me get excited about spending time with her, knowing all along that she was going to leave me alone and helpless. "Why do you think she did it?" Frank asked gently. "Did you two have a fight? Is she in some kind of trouble?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I truly don't know. She's been asking me for money more frequently lately and she seemed nervous today, but I never thought she could do something like this." "Well," Frank said grimly, "I suspect you're about to find out what this was all about. In my experience, when someone does something this extreme, there's usually a reason. And it's usually not a good one." As we got closer to my neighborhood, my anxiety grew stronger. What would I find when I got home? Why had Sarah needed me gone so desperately that she would abandon her own mother on a deserted road? What was she doing right now that she couldn't let me see? Frank pulled into my driveway just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the yard where Robert and I had planted roses 20 years ago. The house looked normal from the outside, but I could see lights on inside, more lights than I usually kept on when I was home alone. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Frank asked. "Make sure everything's okay?" I almost said yes. Part of me was terrified of what I might find inside my own home. But another part of me, the part that still held on to a shred of dignity, wanted to face whatever was waiting for me alone. "Thank you," I said, "but I think I need to handle this myself. You've been so kind, more kind than my own daughter." Frank wrote his phone number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. "You call me if you need anything at all, you hear? And ma'am, whatever you find in there, whatever your daughter has done, remember that it's not your fault. You seem like a good mother who loved her child. Sometimes good people raise bad children, and that's not the parents' fault." I walked slowly up the path to my front door, my key shaking in my hand. Through the windows I could see movement inside, shadows passing back and forth. There were voices, multiple voices, and the sound of laughter. My house, which had been quiet and peaceful when I left that morning, was now full of people and noise. I put my key in the lock and turned it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Whatever I found on the other side of this door, whatever my daughter had done while I was walking alone on that hot, empty road, I knew it was going to change everything between us forever. The door swung open, and the first thing that hit me was the smell: cigarette smoke, alcohol, and the unmistakable odor of strangers in my home. The second thing I noticed was the noise: loud music, raucous laughter, and conversations in voices I didn't recognize. And the third thing, the thing that made my blood freeze and my heart break into a million pieces, was the sight of my daughter standing in my living room, surrounded by a dozen people I had never seen before, acting like she owned the place, like she belonged there, like I was the intruder in my own home. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what I saw her doing, what she was showing to the strangers in my living room, what she was saying about me and about my house and about my life. The worst part was the realization that abandoning me on that road hadn't been a cruel impulse or a moment of weakness. It had been part of a plan, a carefully thought-out scheme that was about to destroy not just my faith in my daughter, but my entire life as I knew it. I stood frozen in my own doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. My living room, the same room where Robert and I had spent countless quiet evenings watching television, where I had rocked Sarah to sleep as a baby, where we had opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays, was now filled with strangers. There were at least 15 people scattered throughout the house, some sitting on my furniture, others walking around examining my belongings like they were shopping at a garage sale. And there, in the center of it all, was Sarah. My daughter stood near the fireplace, holding a glass of wine that she must have taken from the bottle Robert and I had been saving for our 25th wedding anniversary, the bottle I had never opened because it felt too precious, too sacred to drink alone. She was laughing at something a man in an expensive suit had said, gesturing around the room with her free hand like she was giving a tour. "Mom." Sarah's voice cut through the noise when she spotted me in the doorway. The laughter died instantly and every person in the room turned to stare at me. Sarah's face went white as a sheet and the wine glass trembled in her hand. I didn't expect you back so soon." "Didn't expect me back?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "In my own house." The room fell completely silent. I could feel the eyes of all these strangers on me, studying me like I was some kind of curiosity. A middle-aged woman with perfectly styled hair and a clipboard looked back and forth between Sarah and me with obvious confusion. "Sarah," the woman said carefully, "I thought you said this was your house. You said your mother had moved to a nursing home." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to correct this terrible misunderstanding, waiting for her to explain that there had been some kind of mix-up. But instead I saw guilt and panic in her green eyes, the same expression she used to get as a child when I caught her in a lie. "I can explain," Sarah said quickly, setting down the wine glass with shaking hands. "Everyone, could you please give us a few minutes? This is just a family matter that needs to be sorted out." But the woman with the clipboard wasn't moving. She looked at me more carefully, taking in my appearance, an elderly woman who was clearly upset, clearly the rightful owner of this house. "Ma'am," she said to me, "are you Martha Henderson? Are you the owner of this property?" "Yes," I said, finding my voice at last. "Yes, I am Martha Henderson and this is my house. What are all of you doing here?" The woman's expression hardened as she turned back to Sarah. "Miss Henderson, you told me your mother had died and left you this house. You said you had power of attorney and full legal right to sell the property. You showed me documents." The room started spinning around me. Sell the property? Power of attorney? Documents? I grabbed onto the doorframe to steady myself, feeling like I might collapse. "Sell?" I managed to say. "You're trying to sell my house?" Sarah's face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, please let me explain. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you lied to these people," I said, my voice getting stronger as anger began to replace shock. "It looks like you told them I was dead so you could sell my house without my knowledge." The man in the expensive suit stepped forward, looking embarrassed and angry. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm sorry for this misunderstanding. I'm a real estate investor and your daughter contacted me about purchasing this property. She showed me what appeared to be legal documents giving her the right to sell." "What documents?" I demanded, looking at Sarah. "What documents could you possibly have?" Sarah was crying harder now, but she went to her purse and pulled out a folder. With shaking hands she handed it to me. Inside were papers that looked official, with signatures and stamps, documents that claimed to transfer power of attorney from me to Sarah, documents that declared me mentally incompetent and unable to handle my own affairs. I stared at the papers in disbelief. The signature was supposed to be mine, but I had never signed these documents. I had never agreed to give Sarah power of attorney. I had never been declared mentally incompetent by any doctor or court. "These are fake," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Sarah, these documents are completely fake. You forged my signature." The room erupted in angry voices as the potential buyers realized they had been deceived. The woman with the clipboard was already on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. The man in the expensive suit was demanding to know what kind of scam Sarah was trying to pull. But I wasn't listening to them anymore. I was staring at my daughter, the child I had raised with such love and care, trying to understand how she had become someone capable of such betrayal. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked her quietly, and the pain in my voice made everyone else fall silent again. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. "Mom, I'm in trouble. I owe people money, a lot of money, and they're going to hurt me if I don't pay them back." "What kind of people? What money?" I got involved with some bad investments, and then I tried to fix it by borrowing more money but from the wrong people. They want $50,000 by next week or... She couldn't finish the sentence. $50,000. The amount made me dizzy. I didn't have $50,000. I barely had $50 in my checking account after all the money I had already given her. "So you decided to sell my house," I said, the full horror of her plan becoming clear. "You were going to leave me on that road, come back here, sell my house to these people, take the money and disappear. Where was I supposed to live, Sarah? What was I supposed to do? I thought maybe you could stay with Aunt Linda for a while, just until I got back on my feet." Aunt Linda, my sister, lived in a tiny apartment 3 states away and could barely take care of herself. The idea that I would somehow end up there while Sarah sold my house and ran away with the money was so absurd, so cruel that I almost laughed. "You thought I could stay with Linda," I repeated, "while you stole my house and disappeared with $50,000 of my money." "It's not stealing," Sarah said desperately. "I'm your daughter. Everything you have should be mine anyway." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Everything I have should be mine anyway. There it was, the truth that Sarah had probably believed for years. In her mind, I didn't own anything. I was just keeping her inheritance for her, and she had every right to take it whenever she wanted. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom. Get out." I screamed louder than I had ever screamed in my life. "All of you, get out of my house right now." The potential buyers didn't need to be asked twice. They gathered their things and headed for the door, muttering about calling the police and pressing charges for fraud. The woman with the clipboard handed me her business card and told me to call her if I needed a witness for any legal proceedings. Within 5 minutes, my house was empty except for Sarah and me. She stood in the middle of my living room, crying and shaking, looking like the lost little girl she used to be. Part of me, the part that would always be her mother, wanted to comfort her, wanted to find a way to fix this mess and help her out of whatever trouble she was in. But a bigger part of me, the part that had just learned what my daughter really thought of me, was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with sacrificing everything for someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her inheritance. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice calm now but final. "Mom, please. I know what I did was wrong, but I'm desperate. These people I owe money to, they're not the kind of people who just forget about debts. They'll hurt me. You should have thought about that before you forged legal documents and tried to steal my house." "I wasn't stealing it. I was going to pay you back when I got back on my feet." When were you going to pay me back, Sarah? You've been getting back on your feet for 10 years. I've given you thousands of dollars, paid for your education, your car, your rent, your emergencies, and you've never paid back a single penny. And now I find out that you think all of this belongs to you anyway." Sarah sank onto my couch, the same couch where I used to read her bedtime stories, and buried her face in her hands. "I don't know what else to do. I don't have anyone else to turn to. You could get a job. You could sell your belongings. You could face the consequences of your own decisions instead of trying to destroy your mother's life to fix your problems. A job won't pay enough to cover what I owe, and I don't have anything valuable to sell. You have that new car you drove today. That's not my car. It belongs to someone I know." I didn't want to know who she had borrowed a car from or what kind of relationship required that level of trust. I didn't want to know any more about Sarah's life, because every new detail just revealed another layer of deception and poor judgment. I walked to the front door and opened it. "You need to leave now, Sarah. And you need to never come back." "Mom, you don't mean that. I'm your daughter. You can't just cut me off. Watch me." She looked at me, then really looked at me, and I think she finally understood that something fundamental had changed between us. I wasn't the pushover mother she had taken advantage of for years. I wasn't going to make excuses for her behavior or bail her out of this mess. I was done being her victim. Sarah stood up slowly and walked toward the door. When she reached me, she tried one more time. Mom, I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you. If this is how you treat people you love, I said, then I don't want your love anymore. She flinched like I had slapped her, and maybe my words did hurt as much as a physical blow. Good. I wanted her to hurt. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain and betrayal that I was feeling. Sarah walked out the door and down the path to the street where the borrowed car was waiting. I watched her go and I felt something die inside me. Not just my love for my daughter, though that was certainly damaged beyond repair, but my faith in family, my belief that blood ties meant something special, my conviction that unconditional love was always the right choice. After she drove away, I went back inside and surveyed the damage. My house was a mess. There were cigarette burns on my coffee table, wine stains on my carpet, and dirty glasses scattered everywhere. Strangers had been through my belongings, handling my personal possessions, evaluating my life like merchandise. I went to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept important papers. My heart sank as I realized what else Sarah had taken. My bank statements were gone, along with my social security card and birth certificate. She hadn't just tried to sell my house, she had stolen my identity documents too. I sank onto my bed and finally let myself cry. Not just for what Sarah had done today, but for all the years I had wasted believing in her, all the money I had given her, all the nights I had stayed awake worrying about her future when she was busy planning to rob me blind. The phone rang, interrupting my tears. It was Frank, the kind farmer who had picked me up on the road. Mrs. Henderson, I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're all right. Did you find out what your daughter was up to? I told him everything about the fake documents, the attempt to sell my house, the forged power of attorney, the strangers who had been invited into my home while I was abandoned on a country road. Frank listened in silence, and when I finished he was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Henderson, he said finally, I'm sorry to say this, but your daughter is what we used to call a bad seed. Some people are just born without conscience, without the ability to love anyone but themselves. It sounds like your Sarah is one of those people. But I raised her, I protested. I gave her everything. How could she turn out this way? Sometimes good soil still produces bad fruit, Frank said gently. That's not the farmer's fault, and it's not your fault either. You did your best as a mother, but you can't create a good heart in someone who was born without one. After I hung up the phone, I sat in my quiet house and tried to process everything that had happened. My daughter had tried to steal my home, forge legal documents, and leave me homeless and penniless. She had lied to strangers about my death, invaded my privacy, and shown complete disrespect for everything I had worked for. But the thing that hurt the most wasn't the theft or the lies or even the abandonment on that lonely road. It was the realization that Sarah didn't love me, had probably never loved me the way I loved her. To her, I was just a resource to be exploited, an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved. All those years of sacrifice, all that money I had given her, all those sleepless nights worrying about her future, none of it had meant anything to her. I had poured my life into raising a daughter who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end. As I sat there in the growing darkness, I realized that Sarah had taught me something valuable today, something I should have learned years ago. Love without respect is worthless. Sacrifice without gratitude is meaningless. And sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we love the most. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have a child or family member who treats you like Sarah treated me, please don't make the same mistake I made. Don't enable them. Don't sacrifice your own well-being for someone who doesn't appreciate it. Love them, but love yourself too. And remember that saying no to their demands doesn't make you a bad parent or family member. It makes you a strong person who refuses to be taken advantage of. My story isn't over yet, but this was the day I learned the difference between being a loving mother and being a victim. And tomorrow I would start the difficult work of rebuilding my life, protecting myself from further harm, and finding out what real family, the kind based on mutual respect rather than exploitation, actually looks like. The first night after Sarah left was the longest night of my life. I sat in my living room until dawn, surrounded by the evidence of what my daughter had tried to do to me. Empty wine glasses that strangers had drunk from, cigarette ash on my coffee table, the lingering smell of people who had walked through my home evaluating my life like it was merchandise at an auction. Every item in my house felt contaminated, tainted by the knowledge that Sarah had been willing to sell it all and leave me with nothing. I didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face when she said those terrible words. Everything you have should be mine anyway. The casual cruelty of that statement, the way she had said it like it was obvious, like I was foolish for thinking I had any right to my own possessions, my own home, my own life. When the sun finally came up, I made myself a cup of coffee with shaking hands and tried to figure out what to do next. At 68 years old, I felt like I was starting over from nothing, not just financially but emotionally. The daughter I had loved and sacrificed for had tried to destroy me, and I was alone in a way I had never experienced even after Robert died. The phone rang around 8 in the morning. For a moment my heart jumped, thinking it might be Sarah calling to apologize, to explain that she had made a terrible mistake, to beg me to forgive her. But it wasn't Sarah. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived in the house next door. "Martha, honey, I hope I'm not calling too early, but I saw all those cars at your house yesterday and heard voices. Is everything all right?" Mrs. Rodriguez and I had been neighbors for 15 years, but we had never been close. I had always been too busy worrying about Sarah, too focused on my own family problems, to build real friendships with the people who lived around me. But something in her voice, a genuine concern that I hadn't heard from my own daughter in years, made me break down completely. I told her everything. About the fake shopping trip, about being abandoned on the road, about finding strangers in my house, about the forged documents and Sarah's plan to sell my home and disappear. Mrs. Rodriguez listened without judgment, making sympathetic sounds and asking gentle questions. "Dios mío," she said when I finished. "Martha, I am so sorry. No mother should go through this. But you know what? You are stronger than you think. You survived losing your husband, you raised a child on your own, you worked hard your whole life. You will survive this too." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel like the biggest fool in the world. How could I not see what Sarah really was? How could I give her so much money, so much trust, and never realize that she didn't love me?" "Because you have a good heart, Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "You loved your daughter the way a mother should love a child. The fact that she couldn't return that love, that she chose to hurt you instead, that says nothing about you and everything about her." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in 24 hours, not alone. There were people in this world who cared about me, who saw value in me beyond what I could provide financially. I had just been too focused on Sarah to notice them. That afternoon I did something I should have done years ago. I went to the bank and asked to see all of my account statements for the past 5 years. What I found there made me sick to my stomach. In 5 years I had given Sarah over $40,000. $40,000 that I had earned serving coffee and pie to strangers. Money I had saved by eating cheap food and wearing old clothes and skipping doctor visits because I couldn't afford the co-pays. $40,000, and Sarah had thought she deserved more. She had thought she deserved my house too, and she had been willing to forge documents and abandon me on a country road to get it. I sat in the bank parking lot and cried until I had no more tears left. Not just for the money, though losing $40,000 at my age was devastating. But for all the years I had wasted, all the opportunities one had missed to build a real life for myself because I was so focused on funding Sarah's dreams and fixing Sarah's problems. When I got home, there was a police car in my driveway. My heart started racing. Had something happened to Sarah? Despite everything she had done to me, she was still my child, and the thought of her being hurt made me panic. But the officer wasn't there about Sarah. He was there because the real estate investor, the man in the expensive suit, had filed a fraud report. He wanted to press charges against Sarah for the forged documents and attempted property theft. "Mrs. Henderson," the officer said gently, "I know this is difficult because she's your daughter, but what she did was serious fraud. If you're willing to cooperate with the investigation, we can probably get your identity documents back and make sure she can't try something like this again." I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me still wanted to protect Sarah, to find a way to handle this privately without involving the police. But then I remembered the look on her face when she drove away, leaving me alone on that road. I remembered her words about deserving everything I owned. I remembered the strangers in my living room, examining my belongings like vultures. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges. My daughter needs to face consequences for what she did." The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to go to the police station multiple times to give statements and sign papers. I had to meet with lawyers and explain over and over again how my own daughter had tried to steal my house and abandon me homeless. I had to face the pitying looks of strangers who couldn't believe a child could do such a thing to her mother. But something unexpected happened during those difficult weeks. People started reaching out to me. Mrs. Rodriguez brought me homemade soup and stayed to chat. Other neighbors stopped by to check on me. The ladies at my church, women I had known for years but never really talked to because I was always rushing home to worry about Sarah, invited me to join their weekly coffee group. Frank, the farmer who had rescued me from the road, called me several times to check on my progress with the legal case. During one of our conversations he said something that changed my perspective completely. Mrs. Henderson, I've been thinking about what you told me about feeling like you wasted all those years on your daughter. But I don't think you wasted them. You learned something important. You learned the difference between loving someone and enabling someone. And now you get to use that knowledge to build better relationships with people who actually deserve your kindness. He was right. For the first time in 15 years I wasn't sending money to Sarah every month. I wasn't staying awake nights worrying about her problems or making excuses for her behavior. I wasn't arranging my entire life around her needs and demands. I was free to focus on myself, on my own needs, on building relationships with people who actually cared about me as a person rather than as a source of financial support. I started small. I joined the coffee group at church and discovered that these women, some of whom I had known for decades, were funny and wise and genuinely interested in my well-being. I began volunteering at the local animal shelter, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for because I was working extra hours to send money to Sarah. I also made practical changes to protect myself. I changed all my bank account numbers and passwords. I put a fraud alert on my credit report. I installed a security system in my house and gave the spare key to Mrs. Rodriguez instead of keeping it hidden under the flower pot where Sarah had always known to find it. Most importantly, I started seeing a counselor, a kind woman named Dr. Williams who specialized in helping people recover from family trauma. Through our sessions, I began to understand how Sarah had manipulated me for years, using my love for her as a weapon against me. Narcissistic children often see their parents as extensions of themselves rather than as separate people with their own needs and rights, Dr. Williams explained. To Sarah, you weren't a person deserving of respect and consideration. You were a resource that existed solely for her benefit. But how did I not see it? I asked. How did I let it go on for so long? Because you're a normal person with a normal capacity for love and trust. Sarah took advantage of those good qualities. That's not your fault, that's her moral failing, not yours. 3 months after that terrible day, I got a call from the district attorney's office. Sarah had been arrested trying to use fake identification to open a credit card account in someone else's name. She was facing multiple charges for fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The case involving my house was just one of several similar crimes she had apparently committed. Would you like to visit her before the trial? The prosecutor asked me. She's been asking to see you. I thought about it for several days. Part of me, the part that would always be her mother, wanted to see her, wanted to make sure she was all right, wanted to give her one more chance to apologize and make things right between us. But I had learned something important in those 3 months of counseling and soul-searching. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to continue hurting you. And being a good mother doesn't mean sacrificing your own well-being for a child who has proven over and over again that they don't respect or appreciate you. No, I told the prosecutor. I don't want to see her. I hope she gets the help she needs, but I can't be part of that process anymore. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, but it was also the most important one. For 68 years I had defined myself through my relationships with other people, first as Robert's wife, then as Sarah's mother. Now, for the first time in my adult life, I was learning who Martha Henderson was as an individual, separate from anyone else's needs or expectations. 6 months after Sarah drove away and left me on that country road, I was sitting in my backyard garden, planting tomatoes and peppers for the summer. It was something I had always wanted to do but never had time for when I was working extra jobs to fund Sarah's lifestyle. Mrs. Rodriguez was helping me, along with 2 other neighbors who had become genuine friends. As we worked together in the warm spring sunshine, talking and laughing about everything and nothing, I realized something profound. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the constant anxiety and manipulation I had experienced with Sarah, not the one-sided giving and receiving, but this easy companionship with people who enjoyed my company for its own sake. Martha, Mrs. Rodriguez said, wiping dirt from her hands. You look happier than I've ever seen you. Más tranquila, you know? More peaceful. He was right. Despite everything, I had lost my life savings, my relationship with my daughter, my naive faith in unconditional family love. I felt more peaceful than I had in years. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring with Sarah's latest crisis. I wasn't checking my bank balance with dread, wondering how much more money she would need. I wasn't making excuses for someone else's bad behavior or questioning my own worth based on how poorly I was being treated. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea and watched the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of pink and gold. A year ago, I would have been inside, probably on the phone with Sarah, listening to her latest sob story and figuring out how much money I could scrape together to help her. Tonight, I was simply enjoying the beauty of the world around me, surrounded by the quiet contentment of a life lived for myself rather than for someone else's approval. If you're watching this video and you see yourself in my story, if you have someone in your life who treats you the way Sarah treated me, please don't wait as long as I did to make a change. Love is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Family is supposed to support each other, not exploit each other. And you deserve better than being someone else's ATM or emotional punching bag, no matter how much you love them. I learned something important at 68 years old. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose your own happiness over someone else's comfort. The people who truly love you will understand and support your decision to protect yourself. And the people who don't understand, who get angry when you stop allowing them to mistreat you, well, they've just shown you their true colors. Sarah is serving 2 years in state prison now. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about what she did to me, if she feels any remorse for the pain she caused. But mostly I try not to think about her at all. She made her choices and now she's living with the consequences. I've made my choices too, to forgive myself for being too trusting, to appreciate the good people in my life, and to spend my remaining years building relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. My house is quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet rather than a lonely one. I have friends who check on me, hobbies that bring me joy, and a bank account that stays steady because I'm not constantly draining it for someone else's benefit. I have a garden full of vegetables that I planted with my own hands, and neighbors who have become the family I always wanted but never knew how to find. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, even when it hurts. Sarah gave me that gift when she left me on that lonely road. She showed me that I deserved better than what she was willing to give, and she freed me to go find it. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe for more real family stories. And remember, you are worth more than how others treat you. You deserve love that builds you up rather than tears you down. And it's never, ever too late to choose yourself and start building the life you truly deserve. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you make better choices than I did, and I hope you find the courage to surround yourself with people who see your true value. God bless you all, and remember, family isn't just about blood. Sometimes the people who care about you most are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born with.